as if I'm already chose. Like, if she feeling hot, then I make that bitch frozen. I get a bitch tight every time that I post. Damn, the party not lit, then I'd rather not go. If she feeling hot, then I make that bitch frozen. I get a bitch tight every time that I post. Damn, it's not bad, they be on my ass. I could hear you hating from the back. Balenciaga baddie got a bag. Nigga munching, ate it from the back.
Guys, I'm here to be here. I must go straight and turn. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here at Bloomberg, so we're gonna do here for a ministerial briefing or something. So yeah, tune in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment to my video. You know how it rolls. Love you all, guys. For new and coming subscribers, now let's get into it.
That inherits an economy plagued by below 1% growth over the structural challenges. The new government faces the monumental task of accelerating economic reforms to achieve a 3% annual growth rate. This session will delve into the economic strategies and reforms needed to drive growth in this new era. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker who will also be giving us a presentation for today's economic panel, Ms. Tia Fourie. Tia Fourie serves as the Director for Sub-Saharan Africa Economics and Risk at S&P Global Market Intelligence, where she leads the Sub-Saharan Economics and Country Risk Analysis from their office in Centurion, South Africa. With a distinguished career spanning over 30 years, Tia has been at the forefront of macroeconomic modeling and macroeconomic analysis across the Sub-Saharan Africa region. Her expertise cover a diverse range of markets, including South Africa, Nigeria, Zambia, Mozambique, Namibia, Niger, Central African Republic, and Benin. Ladies and gentlemen, Tia Fourie.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for that kind introduction. It always sounds much more impressive than it is, but thank you very much for that. It is an absolute privilege to have this opportunity to present to you today, and all the women in the room, welcome, almost Women's Day. Thank you for inviting me, really looking forward to this presentation. So my job today is to talk a little bit about the post-election outlook for the South African economy. Let me just find my clicker. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the March 2024 elections came, and I think for most of us, it's already forgotten. The markets, combined with a lot of South Africans, sighed a big moment of relief after the forming of the Government of National Unity shortly after. And I think for the first time, there was a glimmer of some optimism emerging in South Africa. But it was very cautious because, you know, everybody was very worried that this again is a false start to a new dawn, as we've seen in 2018 during Ramaphoria, almost a big mistake there. So everybody very much concerned, and you can't really blame South Africans, because if you look at South Africa's GDP per capita growth since 2015, it has been contracting, which means that consistently we have become poorer, right? Which is really a concern. Now, there's a lot of structural issues in the South African economy that contributed to this. We all know about energy deficits, port problems, railway problems, and we're worried about water infrastructure. But I do think it's important to realize that there was also a lot of geopolitical developments that contributed to the weaker growth in South Africa, and also much higher inflation and interest rates in developed economies. Now the question is, after the elections, how do we get from A to B? Is it possible to have GDP per capita growth again at levels we've seen before 2015? Are we allowed to become a bit more optimistic? Now, ladies and gentlemen, our assessment shows that yes, it's definitely possible if some very key policy reforms, like Swazi has mentioned, is implemented in the South African economy. Our analysis at S&P Global Market Intelligence shows that if we can have gross capital formation of 1% over the period 25 to 26, we can have growth at 2.2% over the short term, potential growth. if the capital formation accelerates to 4% year on year over that period, our growth could tick up to 3%. To get at 4.5%, we will need at least gross capital formation of 10% in the very short term, which in our minds is not possible at the moment. I think it's important to realize that gross capital formation in South Africa actually accelerated over the period 2022 to 23 at a level between 4 and 5%, which was a sharp turnaround from the capital depletion we've seen over the period 2015 in the run-up to 2022, where the year-on-year change was actually negative, as you can see on the graph. And of course, the reason for this is that a lot of households, as well as businesses, has implemented new infrastructure to get off the grid and less reliant on Eskom, which has been a net result of the policies that was being implemented over that period. It's also important, I think, for South Africans to realize and remember that there's a gap between savings and investment in South Africa. And this gap is met by foreign direct investment inflows, as you can see from that blue area on the graph. So it's very important for foreign investors, as Swazi has mentioned, private investors, to buy into the policy reforms in South Africa, to believe in them, to bridge the savings gap that is prominent in our economy. And why we think that investors feel confident that this will actually happen is that before the elections, we actually have seen quite a lot of policies already started to be implemented by the ruling African National Congress. And it's around energy, ports, railways, skill shortages, as well as mining. So in March, before the elections, we had the passing of the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill, which makes it much easier to sell and produce electricity in the South African economy, particularly renewable energy. But a crucial element to develop South Africa's renewable energy space is the developments of transmission and distribution lines in South Africa. And therefore it was very welcome that on the 1st of July, the National Transmission Company of South Africa became operational, which ultimately will attract, hopefully, private investment into our transmission system so we can extend it. So the current capacity will remain untapped over the short term, which can unlock the time needed to develop our renewable energy program. Now, both for ports and railway, as Swazi has said, we hear the word public-private partnerships more and more, private sector participation. Well, on the port side, we've seen for the larger ports, Durban as well as Richards Bay. On your side, that side, you can see the constant, widening in South Africa's fiscal deficit since 2017. And for this year, the projections is still at the levels we've seen during 2023. So that being said, the fiscal backdrop remains problematic, remains a concern, and we really need to keep fiscal discipline in place to attain our fiscal targets. Almost finished. Does the stronger growth rate changes our interest rate outlook? No, we still expect the South African Reserve Bank to cut its policy rates by 25 basis points in September and another 25 basis points in November, followed by another 50 basis, but also the narrowing inflation differential between the US and its trade partners, and also the larger current account deficit in the US economy. Over the short term, however, the dollar can remain, or the US market can continue to attract safe haven capital flows, which to our mind can support the US dollar and ultimately leaves little upside for the South African rand. There's also, of course, geopolitical tensions and also financial market tensions for the remainder of the year that can contribute to these safe haven flows. So for the rand exchange rate, we find it highly unlikely that it will appreciate beyond 18 rand to the dollar in the near term. But becomes more possible next year with some, dollar weakness, which ultimately can translate in some rand strength going forward. And then probably one of the biggest calls that S&P Global Market Intelligence makes is that the interest rate developments in the US can also play a role in the near-term outlook for the South African rand. Now, it's very much market consensus that the Fed will cut its policy rates in September of this year. The market considers this almost 100% likelihood. But at Market Intelligence, we, however, warn that there's still a few weeks left, which opens the possibility of some negative inflation as well as employment. And I think we're going to talk about that during our panel. A lot of things can go wrong. There is, the fear that the government of national unity collapses. There is a fear that, the different views between political parties can result in policy paralysis. And we need the momentum in these policy reforms to ensure growth in the South African economy, getting to 2.2% or even 3% in the near term. There's always the questions from foreign investors. What's going to happen in KwaZulu-Natal? Are we going to see a repeat of 2021? What is your view on that? Just in broad, no. We do not think that is a material risk. And of course, at S&P Global Market Intelligence, we also track the risk of contract alterations following these political changes, which of course also gets a lot of attention from foreign investors. So still a lot of risks out there, but bottom line, we need to keep the policy reform momentums that started before the elections. The market believes in us, we should believe.
Election and what some of your economic outlooks may be. As Tia has said, there has been some kind of euphoria that has followed it. And what I would like to know is, first, I'll start with you, Danny. Do you think that this euphoria will...
And so there is this optimism that they could cut in September and the cycle is ahead, and I will reserve my statement on the cycle for now. But I think that from a confidence perspective, we are likely to see that rebound. You could see it in the PMI almost instantly, how we've had a 15% gain in business activity.
We are honored to welcome the Minister to outline the key priorities of South Africa's Government of National Unity as an influential leader in the administration. As we all know, South Africa has emerged from an election with a Government of National Unity. The performance of this new political formation will continue to be of great interest as the nation's 30-year-old democracy matures. Before we get there, I'd like to give a short introduction to the Minister. Mr. Ntshavheni's vast political career stretches many years and transcends any age's biases, and she was already politically active at the age of 14, seeking to shape public policy. She worked in local government and at national level and now oversees the highest office in the land, giving her the profound insight into the workings of government, thus making her the ideal person to tell us all exactly how will South Africa navigate this new juncture of a national government of unity. Please welcome to the podium Minister of the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni.
Thank you and good morning. So it's a problem when you're given one topic and you see reflecting on the screen a different topic. So that's why I have to drink water. Program Director, thank you for the standing introduction. And I was wondering, who is he talking about? Allow me to express my gratitude for what's going to happen, and our constitution never really anticipated a situation like this. In other countries, you can really call for a vote, but the provisions of the Constitution of South Africa does not immediately call for the vote. Any party can form government as long as they've got the support. So it could have taken us 365 days, 475 days, 4 months, like others within the continent and all over, but it didn't do that because the ANC took a decision that they are going to be the responsible party and respect the outcomes of the election, and also the voters that in the largest numbers voted for them to be in government, and then invited others and took the message that it cannot be the ANC alone, and therefore they have to work with others. That's what the Government of National Unity symbolizes, and we're having a discussion. We are aware that we are holding an NEC reporter, and we're having a discussion because there have been accusations of whether the Government of National Unity is of parties that are aligned together. But in actual fact, government of national unity is in their own nature government formed by parties of contradictions, because that's what you continuously manage. And if you go back to the 1994 situation, it's a different one. And our constitution, by the way, provides in Schedule B already for the provision of the government of national unity. Of course, there are other things that are no longer applicable in that section, but all of us were not aware. I only found out a few weeks ago when we had to contend with it. So we are also holding this discussion in a month that South Africa celebrates the determination and resilience of women, and exactly 3 days to that day where more than 20,000 women of all races marched in 1956 to protest and present a petition of demands against the introduction of apartheid pass laws in 1952. The day of the protest was called for on a Thursday, because Thursday was a traditional day when black domestic workers had their day off, with the aim of ensuring that a large gathering of women can take place, so that it's a show of force. Since large gatherings were banned, the women arrived in the union buildings in groups of 2s and 3s. This year, the national celebration of Women's Day on the 9th of August will be in the Northern Cape, a province with great economic potential, but that will require deliberate and determined effort similar to that of Lillian Ngoyi, Sophia Williams-Dickrein, Nahima Musa, and Helen Joseph, and the women of the 1956 march to awaken the giant. Therefore, the discussion about the political economy, what you call the political outlook of South Africa, was told I must talk about the political economy of South Africa. It's a complex tapestry interwoven with historical injustices, aspirations for equality, and the economic prosperity, and confronted by ongoing domestic and international challenges. This discussion is intricately linked to where South Africa is heading to, because that's the primary question you are asking. Where is South Africa heading to? Last year, when I was addressing a summit organized by the Black Business Council, I argued that addressing income inequality, promoting economic transformation, managing natural resources sustainably, and fostering international partnerships are essential components of South Africa's political economy and a path towards inclusive and prosperous development. I would like to assert that this outlook of South Africa's political economy and this path to development has not changed with the formation of the Government of National Unity. And I want to argue that because the basic minimum program of priorities, as set out in the statement of intent that was signed by the political parties, that can endow our people with the means not only to analyze their circumstances, but also to change them. And that's, as I close quote and say, our future of South Africa is still determined by the priorities of redressing the inequalities of the past, building an economy that is inclusive, in equipping our people to be able to participate equitably and effectively with any other, as we build a prosperous and inclusive South Africa for all. Thank you very much. Those priorities through government action per department, and then the cluster, and then we'll come back with what we call the medium-term development plan, the MTDP. It used to be called the medium-term strategic framework. That will be what will guide the 7th administration. And therefore, that's the first part. So those priorities will then be made public, because we submit them to Parliament, and you'll have a look at them, including for clusters and also for departments. The second part is that the ministers and their deputy ministers will then have to translate those priorities to say, what are the performance targets and performance indicators that they will then work to deliver on when they're ministers. So when I'm sitting here as Kumbuzo Chairman, and the four and a half portfolios that I run,
but I don't know how, because he doesn't know. Because and
And that is why we're playing the role that we need to play. And it must never be undermined. What's the role of accountability?